Our next session, Turning Climate Challenges into Growth Opportunities, C-Suite Insights. Please welcome to the stage our moderator, Editorial Director, Fortune Magazine, Kristin Stoller, Founder and Strategic Advisor, CDP and Co-Founder, Climate Week NYC, Paul Dickinson, and President and CEO, Workiva, Julie Iskow.
Good afternoon, everyone. How's everyone doing? Woo! All right, good to hear it. So it's no secret that business leaders are facing a host of challenges when it comes to advancing their climate goals, especially in this increasingly complex landscape. I believe that the argument could be made that in this interconnected world, the concept of committing to a sustainable future isn't just an ethical imperative, it's also a business imperative. It drives innovation, it helps attract top talent, builds resilience, and it definitely positions companies for long-term success while also serving the greater good. And these two panelists here on stage with me are experts in the concept of driving business growth while doing good for the planet and the world. So Julie and Paul, I want to start. So we are living in ridiculously challenging times. Digital and financial transformation have become a mandate. The regulatory environment keeps shifting and changing. And there's just so much complexity going on in the business landscape right now. I named a lot of challenges there, but Julie, what keeps you up at night?
What keeps me up? I'm exhausted, so I go right to sleep. However, you mentioned digital financial transformation, regulatory landscape. It's increasing in scope and complexity. There's also data. It's coming at you from everywhere, exploding at a breakneck pace, and you have to understand it, learn how to harness it, manage it, and make something of it and gain insights from it. There's new technology all around, and yes, it's AI, yes, it's generative AI, yes, it's agentic AI, but it's more than just AI. There's technology out there that you need to understand how to leverage, and if you're not leveraging it to get insights from your data, then there's a perception that you're falling behind. So there's that to think about. There's also scrutiny, right? Investor scrutiny, and it's not just the financial anymore, it's also the non-financial. And there are geopolitical challenges and on and on. There's uncertainty in the markets and so forth. And for many of you and us, there are talent challenges, shortages, right? In 2035, they estimate there will be a 3.5 million shortage of accountants. So we're working to handle all of these things. And when I say working to handle them, it's not just a balance, right? Leaders today have to be thinking about all of them. You need to do them. It's not either or, it's not a balance. You need to prioritize all of them. And I think we look at we've got over 6,000 customers, and we watch them and we talk with them and we see that these are the challenges keeping them up at night. And again, it's not one, two, a few. It's how do you do all of them in the best way possible. And leadership, like you said, it's really hard right now. And you need to be deliberate. You need to be intentional. You need to have the right tools. You need to think about your teams. So these are the kinds of things that I would say keep us up at night. You need to focus on innovation, you need to focus on profit, you need to gain trust of your stakeholders and your customers. So it's really a lot to think about, but again, it's not a balance. You need to prioritize them in the right way and do work the right way to do all of them.
Absolutely, and good thing you have the Oura Ring and an Apple Watch that I'm sure also helps you sleep at night. Paul, what about you? What's going on at CDP that's making you stay awake?
Well, first of all, just to say, Julie, what a list. I mean, that's something, okay? But I wrote a book once called Beautiful Corporations, and you know, great corporations have the capability and the systems to deal with these problems, but thank you for naming them. CDP is continuing to grow. We're now in our 22nd year of reporting. I can't believe it. It must have started when I was 10. And we now have 23,000 corporations reporting last year. I think what keeps me up at night, good news is we're doing all the right things and we're going to get the job done. Bad news is we ain't going to do it fast enough. And you know, there is a saying that if something's true in reality, it must be true in theory. Billions of people have got the memo about extreme weather. So there's now an enormous appetite. We were talking about this earlier, actually. Customer appetite, consumer appetite for the solutions. And my concern is just many, many businesses aren't going to move fast enough.
That's a great one. And I think the other problem that I'm seeing for businesses is that they are keeping up with the regulations and doing all the right things, but they're struggling with embedding sustainability and ESG goals into their company culture. How do you change the culture of your company to make sure that that base is there? And Julie, let's start with you.
I think you need to think about it strategically, and strategically, it's an opportunity. And you said it as you opened up. I mean, there's opportunity there for performance, right? It's not either or. It's performance. It's both performance and sustainability, and they fuel each other. Sustainability fuels performance. I think the first step in that is, of course, looking at holistically at your organization, the financial aspects of your organization, as well as the risks, as well as the non-financial ESG or sustainability data, all together and getting a holistic view. And actually, Workiva did a study not long ago. It was an executive study, a benchmark study about integrated reporting. And what we found was, it was a global study. Over 90% of those that we surveyed said that having both the financial and non-financial together and looking at it gave a much more holistic view of their company, and therefore it was, you're able to look at your performance in a different way, right? It fuels business outcomes, performance outcomes. So it really is that. When you think about how you put it into your company, you start at the top with a strategy, and it needs to be baked into the strategy. It's baked into your operational objectives, your 1, 2, 3-year objectives. It's part of performance. And you also want to ensure that the board has oversight. You're reporting to the board. Your C-suite is thinking about it, and it is part of your company objectives. So it really becomes part of your culture, and everyone in your company is living and breathing the perspective of sustainability and sustainable practices and development, as well as performance. We're all great at performance, but marrying the two, integrating the two, and again, prioritizing both. It's both and, not the balance and not either or. Sustainability fuels performance, and knowing that helps you incorporate it into the company.
Yeah. Paul, what do you advise the companies you work with?
When people say there's this regulation, or it's like bureaucracy, and I got to do all this stuff, and I don't want to do it. No. Whatever you think of the individual, the richest person in the world makes electric cars. This is the huge markets of the future. I'm old enough to remember working in like digital when the internet came, and I remember I talked to companies about their web strategies. They go, well, we're not really computer people here. And I'm like, this is happening to you, right? It's up to you whether you're going to be Canon or Kodak. It's that moment. But some of the figures are just crazy. Clean energy investment exceeded fossil fuel investment. Anyone know what year? 2016, right? 2023, I think, it was 1.1 trillion on fossil fuel investment, 1.7 trillion on clean energy. Who pays your suppliers' energy bills? Huh? You work that one out? You pay your suppliers' energy bills. So it's entirely legitimate for you to go up your value chain, roll up the savings, and that's just more revenue for you. So ultimately, efficiency, the first fuel, and new market opportunities, of which there are so many. One last tiny story. Some people who know me will know I've been completely obsessed with video communication for 24 years. And I always felt like Atlas holding this, right? But after COVID-19, suddenly we see, actually, what we can do with, when we use the technology properly. It's unbelievable. So think how many other technologies are going to be coming that are going to help us. Food science, I could go on.
Yeah. I feel like the term ESG has become such a dirty word recently. It's the thing that every boardroom wants to avoid, and there's these shareholder activists, and et cetera, et cetera. How do you get the buy-in of your board when you want to talk about developing sustainable solutions for your businesses? And how do you get over that stigma? Julie, let's start with you.
I think it's in every boardroom today, and it's because of what, again, going back to sustainability linked to performance, this is what boards want to do. They're there to build a long, durable growth company, as well as ensure performance. And if you aren't paying attention to that, then you're neglecting a key component of your business. You need to drive business value, and doing that incorporates, the necessity of sustainable practices. So I do think today we've moved beyond the, a box checking exercise, and companies are moving in the direction of understanding that sustainable development, sustainable practice, sustainable innovation is front and center again for performance, and boards are there, and bringing the data in, to the boardroom and explaining that is key. You need to educate and ensure that they're understanding how they power each other, right? Performance and sustainability.
Yeah, Paul, what do you think?
Well, I'm going to pick on one company, if I can be forgiven, and it's a UK company called, well, Swiss, I think, Glencore, and they're kind of mining trading company, but they have a big coal division. And most of us know that coal miners are heroes in my book, but coal is essentially the most polluting fuel. And they were under a lot of pressure from investors to sell the coal division, and they were planning to sell the coal division, and then they changed their mind. And the chief executive said, recently, just a month ago, cash is king, we're going to keep the coal. And he said, anyway, the tide has changed on ESG. Well, that's kind of convenient for a coal miner, but the tide hasn't changed on climate change, friends. And the tide hasn't changed on gigantic industrial policy, Green New Deals, Inflation Reduction Acts. So don't confuse things that are inevitable and the result of reading a graph, like the impacts of climate change, with the fact that some phrase called ESG grew up, which is a little bit complicated because greenhouse gas emissions are not the same things as social issues, and perhaps it was always a mistake to mix them up. But don't confuse people picking on ESG with fundamental issues to do with the atmosphere.
The other thing I'll say is that ESG, you hear that there's a backlash or it's not as important these days. It's in the US, but every business knows if they want to compete in a global ecosystem on a global stage, they're going to have to be reporting, they're going to need to be transparent about their non-financial factors and their data. So this is not, it's not optional. Again, if you're looking for business performance and creating value, you are going to potentially be a supplier to those in the EU. CSRD is here. You need to report on the 2024 data in your filings in 2025, the largest cohort, companies that will be reporting there. It's here. It's global. In the US, sure, it's a word that sometimes gets a little reaction, but we're seeing, regardless of the regulation, companies are moving forward with sustainability management, and they're doing it again to compete on a global stage for business performance, for growth creation, for the stakeholders of employees to get great talent, for the customers, for the communities that they operate in, and of course for investors. So it's about stakeholder demand, it's about company performance, it's of course a thriving globe, but really it's moved beyond any sort of our numbers we don't have any indication of a backlash from the companies that we work with. They continue to want and need the capabilities for transparent reporting of sustainable practices.
Non-financial factors could also be called very soon to be financial factors. So
of course, it all impacts the financial valuation of companies and financial performance.
They're totally intertwined. And Julie, I want to go back to something you said at the beginning, which was you mentioned tech solutions. Can you give us an example of how you or your customers or anyone is using technology to help track the sustainability goals that they've set?
Sure. I'll give you examples of, I woke up this morning and looked at an article, the top 50 companies making impact, for our sustainable future. And they're companies who are, transportation companies and manufacturing companies. And it's very clear and obvious when they make changes in their supply chain or, how they manufacture. It's very clear to see their progress. We're a software company, we're a technology company. It's not as clear, but our biggest footprint is our compute, right? We're taking in so much data. Our company is scaling and doing ESG reporting, sustainability management. You have to, and carbon accounting. You need to take in a lot of data. We're getting more and more customers. So our footprint is using compute power from our providers, right, on on cloud. And so an example of what we've been doing internally in innovation around sustainability is we've been building our software differently, re-architecting it. We're designing it so that we're not as reliant on those cloud providers for us to grow and scale. So that's an internal. The way we're doing it, of course, for our customers is, as I mentioned earlier, helping them to see the more holistic view with financial data, non-financial ESG or sustainability data, and then of course adding assurance onto it. You want to be assured that your data is, you've got data consistency, data accuracy, data integrity, and that's critically important. So we're building out innovative capabilities to help, yes, ourselves, but our customers also be thinking about transparently reporting their data as well.
Excellent. Paul, you seeing any innovative tech solutions?
Yeah, I mean, I make a joke, and it's not intended to be funny, and it's a bit of a dark joke. But the idea is that we don't make it, sadly. And in a couple of million years, the flying saucers arrive, and the aliens come, and what happened to the humans? And they try and dig into it. They put their Sherlock Holmes hat on, and they try and find out what happened to the humans, and they discover that we tried to deal with the biggest problem in our history using Microsoft Excel. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with Excel. It's super, for figuring things out when you're on the go. But this is time for the enterprise system to grow up regarding these data sets and to build the systems. Because it breaks my heart when, the resource and the energy is going out to consultants, and potentially just not building up inside the organizations. So yes, there are a number of great platforms. If you ask me outside, I can give you my recommendations. But I think that it's important that we grasp the scale of what we're doing. This is a long-term change. The biggest trends in the world are decarbonization and digitization. You want to take them very, very seriously. And it's an exciting time for those who get ahead of the curve. Just one final thing we're going to come on to AI? Or?
That's what you read my mind. I was just about to ask about it.
I'll hand over to Julie, but I'll just say this one thing. As we make use of machine intelligence in the future, we've got to benchmark the right data now, because those machines are beyond our imagination, but they're only as good as the data that goes into them.
And speaking of that, and we're here at Climate Week, another area of innovation for us has been carbon accounting. We rolled out Workiva Carbon, and of course it takes data in the applicable and relevant data, but you're able to collect and manage and measure and track and report your carbon emissions data, which is of course key and fundamental to everything we're talking about this week at Climate Week. So another area of innovation. We're here at Nest if you want to go take a look at your carbon footprint this week at Climate Week.
Oh, that's really cool. Now, how do you make sure, because I feel like these solutions are great, and you're talking to them with the C-suite knows how to use it theoretically. How do you make sure that it's then trickling down to employees and they are also stakeholders in this solution? Julie, let's start with you.
Well, of course, I mean, from the capabilities that we provide, we work with the users who are actually using them, and they, of course, have their own financial and sustainability objectives and goals. But we work with customers, of course, to do that. In Workiva, and what we see, and all the boards I'm a part of and on, it really is, you've got to, again, start at the top, make it good, healthy companies have company strategies. They have company objectives over multi-year periods. They have the annual objectives and operational objectives. They incentivize their employees in the right way to move in the right direction. And again, weaving the performance objectives with the sustainability objectives and cascading those down to the employees within the company, it matters, right? It's part of their everyday, activities. So critically important that you're talking about it, the visibility is there, incentives are there, understanding of why it fuels the business and how the company will achieve better outcomes and they themselves benefit as well.
Yeah, you mentioned incentives. I want to touch on that because you mentioned employee incentives. I want to talk about global incentives. Is there any laws that should be enacted or any incentives to have businesses really invest in these solutions? Paul, what do you think? Let's start with you first.
You might get different answers from us, but what I know is we're not reducing emissions at 6% a year, and we have to do that. That's what the scientists tell us, and that's how we avoid dangerous climate change, which is very important because this is not a linear process. We don't know what's going to happen if we go outside of the, basically there's high uncertainty. And I once talked to an insurer who said the higher the uncertainty is, the more provision you make for the risk. So uncertainty isn't like a do nothing. Uncertainty is like pay a lot of attention. But I think that there's a critical role for governments at the city, state, national, even international level. But if I can say something slightly rude, this turd has been polished for a couple of decades, and we actually need to kind of roll our sleeves up and sit together and say, what are the investable plans? You want a better nationally determined contribution? You want an industry fit for the future? Work with investors. Civil servants should be sitting with investors, with corporations, and kind of breaking through the roadblocks and getting the job done. It's time to fix it, clear the way.
Yeah, I'm aligned with Paul, and I do think incentives are optional. Even with incentives, it's going to vary what those incentives are from geography to geography, whether it's country to country, whether it's industry that you're in. So it's going to be very complex to have those. And let's face it, we're here because we need bold change. Incentives will drive us more slowly. Maybe they'll get us there. I mean, we put incentives in for electric vehicles, and it worked for a bit. It was short term, and it's something you need to keep up, you need to be on top of, but it doesn't make bold impact, and it doesn't make bold change. And this is where regulation is playing a role, but it's also education around sustainable practice. I'll say it again, it's both ands. It's sustainability and performance. They fuel each other, and both get more potential for both, right, if you do them together. And I think this is the misnomer. It's not a false dichotomy. They're not in conflict. And I think the world needs to recognize that, and the more we do it and the bolder the change. So sure, incentives are wonderful, but doing that globally, doing that holistically, and ensuring that it leads to bold change is perhaps not the answer, across the globe all at once.
Yeah. I think also a lot of companies have made really public, really bold promises on their sustainability plan and what they're promising customers and their shareholders that they're going to do. But as a journalist, as consumers, as business leaders, how can we hold these companies accountable to what they promised, and how can they build trust with all stakeholders involved? Julie.
Sure, and I'll let Paul talk about the CDP, because I think it's a really, so many companies, thousands and thousands of companies report through CDP, and they weren't doing it because they had to, right? Transparency builds trust and holds companies accountable, and that's what this is really all about. No better way to build trust than be transparent, and then do what you say you're going to do. Put targets out there and then work to meet them. You can't just put them out for 2030, 2040, 2050. You have to show progress. And there's a demand for that transparency. Stakeholders are demanding it. And again, whether it's your customer, whether it's your employees, whether it's communities, whether it's your investors, I think accountability to what you say you're going to do, of course, then doing it is critically important. And I think there is this transparency and this openness, and for example, the CDP and reporting through it, it holds companies accountable. 5,000 plus companies have put out science-based targets towards net zero or net zero, right? 2/3, I heard it again this morning, 2/3 of the top 2,000 companies have put out net zero targets. And I think stating that, being transparent with it, is the best way to hold companies accountable then and see that they're moving in that direction.
Yeah. Paul, what about you?
Yeah, if I can build on that, it's a great setup. So CDP, as I said, 22 years reporting, incredibly long time. We started as a global organization, so there are hundreds of US companies, or at least hundreds, say, that have been reporting for a couple of decades. My friend Christiana Figueres, who got the Paris Agreement and was part of the team that got that, she spoke first at the CDP launch event in New York in 2010, and she said, CDP is to the future of the corporation what the X-ray machine was to the then future of medicine. Before it, you couldn't see the inside of the patient's health. Now, I'm just going to stick with the medical metaphor for a moment. That X-ray has taken us through to what you could call the diagnosis, and that is to some extent the science-based targets or the net zero commitments. They're saying, okay, this is what we're going to do about it. The patient can do a certain amount of this themselves, renewable energy, energy efficiency. But where we're really moving now, and this is me trying to bring to you an insight from Europe, we don't have the world's most impressive corporations. That is the sole property of the USA. Very impressive. I'm impressed. I come here and I'm like, wow, I got kind of girl crush on giant companies and I'm in the right country, right? But in Europe, we have a next iteration of this, which is the transition plan. And I would encourage you all to think about, there's a material available, the Treasury in the UK worked to produce a transition task force. What would a transition plan look like for your business? And I spoke to someone from a great media agency. I said, what's a transition plan? And this person said, it's a way for you to speak with confidence about how you're going to create value through the transition. So it's good to think about what the data you need and then how to build that into your long-term planning.
And again, it's about being transparent with it and tracking it and measuring it and showing the progress. And that's how you hold companies accountable.
Absolutely. Now, I want to end here on a note. We are about a month and a half out from a very important election, as all of you know. So how are you both looking at how you think this election is going to shape both, I guess, the global business landscape, but also within your companies and your sustainability goals as well? Julie, let's start with you.
There is a perspective that ESG, sustainability, climate change issues, that they're political, right? But it's really about risk management, surfacing risks, identifying them, measuring them, monitoring them, and addressing them. And it's, again, about business performance as well. So, it's not, whatever the administration that's in place, I mean, the train's left the station, the momentum is there. Again, it's US-based, we're talking about a US election. Companies have moved beyond regulation. Mm-hmm. Companies are looking, again, to play on the world stage. They're wanting to play in that ecosystem. They know it's there. They're building programs for global business. They may be reporting locally, and maybe they'll report differently based on regulation or lack of it in the US, but they're building programs globally and preparing for it and doing what's necessary, again, for stakeholders, right? They're doing it to be transparent for their stakeholders and for better business performance, short-term and long-term performance.
Excellent. Paul?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. It's going to make a difference, obviously, in some regards, maybe to the environment in the USA, but I couldn't agree with you more. This is a global issue. It's not really political at all. I mean, there's like 800 events here. There's like a bazillion people have come to Climate Week. I can sense that the great, US-based business system, US-led business system is kind of clocking together, linking, the investments are being made, the technologies are being rolled out. And that is going to happen whoever is in the White House for the next 4 years. Right. And it's an incredibly exciting time because, sustainability in a certain way is the name we give to problems the government can't fix. So this isn't really about the government. It's about us doing what we need to do to get this to turn out right, and I know we're going to do it.
I
Absolutely.
love the optimism. Thank you both. Well, thank you, Julie. Thank you, Paul.
No.
And thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
This is amazing.
Thank you very much.